Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to Viva-Mundo's webinar. Today we are joined by the wonderful Shenzhen University in Hong Kong, China, and they will be able to speak with you about applications, reasons to apply, and more. Any questions that you may have, please do ask them into the Q&A box at the bottom of our screen, and we will be here to answer all of those at the very end of our webinar. Without further ado, I will say hi to those on Facebook as well. And if you want to ask any questions, please register at the link that I have also placed into the box on Facebook. So I will hand you over to Murray Johnson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the introduction, Steph Roller. It's lovely to be here. And it's an honor to be giving this presentation. So my name is Murray Johnson. I'm the head of international admissions at the Chinese University of Hong Kong in Shenzhen. And today I want to talk about this topic, Daoshan Xuehai, which for those of you out there who don't speak Chinese, this is learning is as high as the mountains, so Daoshan, and as wide as the sea. So high is sea, learning is Xue. And so this is a fairly common or fairly well-renowned Chinese phrase. And essentially, what we're really going to look at tonight is why would you want to complete your higher education in China? Obviously, a lot of people, when they think of going to study overseas, they think of America, they think of the UK, they think of Australia, Canada, places like this, fairly places with well-established and long existent higher education systems. And so today I want to look at China. Why would you think of coming to China to study? So why am I doing this presentation? Well, obviously, I work at a Chinese university and we're trying to attract international students, but also because I've lived in China now for about 12 or 13 years. So in the time that I've been here, I've kind of really got to learn a lot about life in China and gain a real appreciation for what it's like to live here and the importance of understanding China. And this is what I really want to talk about today. So the approach that we're going to take here is, and I've got to apologize, my PPT seems to be slightly incorrect at the moment. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to change something around and try setting up something new. I do apologize for this. So the main thing to mention here is that China is not often considered as a market for international education. People will sometimes come to China to learn Chinese, but a lot of people don't necessarily think of China when they think of, I want to go somewhere to learn a major, to study business, to study science and technology. And what I really want to emphasize here is this is an option that people should start to think about and think about very seriously, because actually the opportunities that studying in China presents are enormous. And if you can come to China, if you can come and survive in China and learn Chinese and learn to understand how Chinese people work and think, then this will really change the opportunities and change the way you see the world and the opportunities that you have for the future also. So, again, apologies for this, but just get that organized. Go to that screen instead. Okay, that's better. So the aim for today is I'm going to talk first about studying in China and how this is a decision which can really change your life. After we talk about this, I'll probably talk briefly about our university, and then I'm going to welcome two important guests who are going to help talk about, in particular, studying science and studying business in China. And then finally, after all this is finished, we'll take some questions and answers. So the two guests who'll be joining us a little bit later are Professor Zhu Ping. He's a very well-renowned scientist who has studied both here in China and in Canada. He's received many, many accolades from both the Canadian scientific community, but also the Chinese and the world scientific community. So he'll be talking a little bit about studying science in China and helping to answer some questions about living and studying in China in general. We'll also be joined by Mr. Mark Kosnerak, who is Executive Director of a group called the Shenzhen Finance Institute, which is a postgraduate major doing business. And so his experience, both having studied in America, but also now looking after postgraduate students in particular here in China, but also understanding how Chinese business works, will hopefully help you to understand the importance of studying business in China. So if you're thinking about asking questions, you're welcome to direct them to either myself, to Professor Zhu, or to Mr. Kosnerak, and we'll all be very happy to take your questions at the end of the presentation. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about why China. And let's start kind of simple here. When you finish high school, there's kind of the phrase, the English phrase, the world is your oyster. There is so much that you can do. There's so many options available to you. There's so many things that you can choose. You can choose to study any major. You can choose to study science. You can choose to study journalism. You can choose to study dentistry. You could choose to study astronomy. You could try and be a nuclear physicist. You could choose to be a waiter. There's so many choices available to you in terms of what you can study. And then if you suddenly turn around and say, and I can go anywhere in the world to study this, just think about how amazing your choices are and how this can totally change the way your life goes. And so this is kind of the importance of this decision, because there's some very famous movies in life, one called Sliding Doors, where it talks about, okay, you're going through life and then you get to a decision where you have to choose between this or this. And this changes the way you live your life. So if you think about the implications of this, not just what major you do, but where you choose to study, this is going to dramatically change what sort of life you have in the future. Obviously, if you stay in your home country, if you stay in your home city, this will be totally different if you go to another country. If you choose to study business in your home country compared to going overseas and studying business, this will totally change the way you live your life, because this is going to change all of your options. It's going to change who you know and who you get along with. This is going to change who your friends are. This is going to change probably going to determine how successful you are and stuff like this, how much money you make in the future. And all of these things will have a huge impact, obviously, on the rest of your life. Now, this is not to say that any of this is irreversible. If you go somewhere and it's not what you want it to be, like let's say you start studying medicine and then you decide in year 3 that actually the sight of blood really terrifies you, it's not the end of the world. It's not as though you're stuck doing medicine for the rest of your life. You can still change and study something else, but making the right decision at the start is a really good chance to really set yourself up for the future. So what I really guess I want you to think about as we go through and talk about this is China an option? Is there somewhere where you're seriously considering about going to study? Is there somewhere which can help you for the future, set you up for the future? And this is kind of the important point in terms of what we're going to talk about here tonight. So, point number one, why China? Again, as I've mentioned, there's loads of countries around the world. There's thousands of places you can choose about where you want to go and study. So why would you choose China as an option? One of the main jobs of going to university, besides just generally learning knowledge, is to set yourself up for the future and to set yourself up for a successful life. So academic expertise, academic knowledge, general skills like this, interpersonal communications, things like this are obviously one of the main things that you're going to be trying to do when you're going to university. But to be honest, most universities around the world will give you this now, especially if they're high quality universities. You can go to a university in almost any country and you should be able to be expecting a high quality educational experience and something which is really going to help your interpersonal skills. To prepare for the world which is coming, to prepare for the future, you need something which is going to give you an edge, something which is going to give you an advantage over the other people who are applying for jobs, something which is going to help you to do things that other people cannot. So whereas most people after university can go and point to good academic records, can point to attending a good university or something like this, can point to that they can play basketball or they can dance or they can play a musical instrument. Even if you write well, even if you can write a good job application, this isn't necessarily enough. Often you're needing something to really make yourself stand out in an application. And so this is kind of a big point about why studying in China is so important. I shouldn't really need to tell people about the term the Asian century. I expect probably most of you have heard this probably to death by now. It's been a phrase which has been around for 20 to 30 years. It kind of started with Japan, Korea, and then has been building with China's growth and is probably going to continue for the years to come with countries like Indonesia and India really hitting their straps and growing. Asia is home to half of the world's population, and as wealth grows in these areas, the power and the influence that these countries have over the rest of the world is also growing. And what you should see, or what you should be aware of if you're not familiar with it already, is the change in balance of power. There's a lot of articles which are talking about how power used to be in Europe. It's kind of shifted to America this decade, or this last century, and now it's really shifting across towards Asia, and Asia is really carrying this. And China is certainly currently, and expected to be for a long time to come, a world leader in this and a real driving force in the Asian century. And as I said, none of this should be new. I don't expect any of you out there are kind of going, oh, wow, I've never heard of China before. It's in the news all the time. It's in the news every day. So I'd be expecting that this is logical to you. But the real key here is not many people are really taking advantage of this, and not many people are really trying to seize on this and make the most of it. And if you do want to seize this, if you do want to take advantage of the fact that the Asian century is, if not very rapidly appearing, if not already here, you need to kind of think about how to do it and how to make the most of this opportunity. And this means that you need to start being willing to learn about China, to learn from China. Not necessarily to turn around and say, yes, China is the greatest country in the world any more than Japan, any more than America, any more than any other country is the best country in the world. But you do need to recognize that there's a lot that we can learn from China, and there's a lot that we should learn. And what the Asian century really means, and particularly with China as a leading force in this, is workplaces are increasingly needing a Chinese capable workforce. And this means in all aspects. This means in terms of Chinese language skills, but not just Chinese language skills. It's also about understanding Chinese people. I mean, if you walk around most cities in the world, you will find Chinese people, Chinese businesses, Chinese companies now. They're there doing the work and interacting with other people. And you need to know, how do these people think? How do these people work? Because it's not the same as American companies. It's not the same as European companies. They take a very different approach to things. And therefore, you need to be able to understand China and understand Chinese people to do this. And this also means, as China is now leading the world in a lot of fields, we need to be able to learn from China and learn about China. And if you can do this, there's going to be more and more companies which are looking for people who have this knowledge and have this skill. Now, I guess one of the questions which you'd ask is, cool, I can stay home, I can watch my TV and watch a TV show about what's happening in China, or I can read a book, or I can go to my local university and do a course about China. Surely this is enough, but not really. Like, if you think about your country, where you're from, would you say that someone reading a book about your country is enough? Would you say even a course studying your China studying your country would be enough to really help you understand that country, to understand the people, to understand how it works? And I think that you would honestly say no. I'm Australian. I've traveled overseas, as I said, for probably most of the last 15 to 20 years. And while people are normally very positive and very friendly about China, about Australia, people don't often know too much about Australia. They don't understand Australian people. They don't understand Australian culture. And that's fine. I mean, Australia's not leading the world in businesses and stuff like this, so this isn't quite so important in that regard. But for China, this is really important. And for all the reasons I've talked about so far, understanding China and learning about Chinese people and how Chinese people think is a really vital step and a vital attribute that very few people out there have at the moment. But it's something which is going to grow in demand and should be in demand in a big way at the moment already. Chinese people are living all around the world. They're experiencing these different cultures, and then they're coming back to China. So China is learning about the rest of the world, but the reverse isn't quite so true. So I guess you could still turn around and say, fine, it's someone else's job to go to China and learn about China. I don't really think it's important enough or good enough, or it doesn't offer a good enough value for me. And I kind of want to try and push back at this if I can. Essentially, if you look at China in the last 20 years and the last 30 years, again, it's all in the news. You can see how much growth and how much development there has been in China. You can see how things have improved. And the higher education system is just one example of this, where in the last 20 years, the Chinese government has poured huge amounts of money into the education sector. And as part of this, they're improving the general quality of their education, but they're also working to really internationalize the education. And what this means is they're working to make the education here much more suitable for people from all over the world and much more applicable, so that people in China can then go to other parts of the world and be involved with work in other countries. So a lot of China's top universities, like Tsinghua, Peking, and places like this, are putting increasing emphasis on international studies. But in addition to this, there's also a number of partnerships between Chinese universities and some of the best universities around the world, of which our university is proudly one. So the Chinese University of Hong Kong has opened the campus here in Shenzhen, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Shenzhen. And the quality of the education which is being provided here is really well recognized in terms of our university already has partnerships with a lot of the world's best universities. If you look at universities like Yale, Oxford, St. Andrews, National University of Singapore, Seoul National University, Technical University of Munich, like all of these universities around the world are recognizing the importance and the quality of education and universities and students who are studying in China and the courses that are taught here. And so what you'll find here if you come to study is some of the world's best universities. And this is carried out in pretty much all of the research which is being done about about Chinese universities. So QS, one of the top world rankings, talked about how a lot of the Chinese universities, which used to be slightly lower ranked, have really leapt up into the top 100 in just 5 years. And the head of research in QS has talked about how this is one of the most noteworthy trends in global higher education, the growth of these Chinese universities, the development of these Chinese universities. The other ranking system, Times Higher Education, also says the same. This is looking specifically at majors, so not just at the overall performance of universities, but at specific majors. And Times Higher Education actually notes that Chinese universities are actually outperforming institutions in most of the rest of the world. They're sharing the same scores as those in the UK and the US. So again here, the quality of education which is being produced here is matching and often exceeding that in the UK and the US and places like this. And again, with the trajectory of growth and improvement that these Chinese universities have, you'd be expecting that they're probably going to start to exceed a lot of their rivals in Western countries in the coming years. If you then go and look at costs, you'll see that even though the quality of education in China is very high, the costs are not necessarily higher. In fact, they're often significantly lower. So if you look at tuition fees, and again, obviously this depends a little bit on the university you attend and the fees that they charge and so on and so forth. So this will vary, but in pulling these statistics together, I did kind of look at a few different websites and tried to get a variety of statistics. And what you'll see here is, so CUHK Shenzhen, which is actually a reasonably expensive university in China, is already notably cheaper than universities in most other developed countries. Obviously, living and doing university is more than just tuition fees. So if, let's look at accommodation, for example. Now, our university, again, CUHK Shenzhen, is ridiculously cheap for accommodation, like crazy cheap for accommodation. So you're comparing this to these other universities around the world where you're paying so much more for accommodation. Living costs, we'll look at something like transport, for example. Even if you're going for the most aggressive figure of transport in Shenzhen, where we're based, it's still substantially cheaper than that in other countries. And then on top of all this, there's still scholarships available. So our university offers full tuition scholarships for the duration of your study at our university for 4 years, if you choose to come here to study. But there are also government scholarships, there's college scholarships, there's academic performance scholarships. So even though the cost of study in China is significantly cheaper than many other parts of the world, there's so many other benefits in terms of also the accommodation, the living costs, and the generous scholarships which are available when you're here. So we'll move on now to a little bit more about you and what you're going to gain from coming here to study. And let's look in particular at the educational knowledge that you're going to gain. So the first one here, the world-class institutions, I've already touched on this. I've already talked about how Chinese university institutions are taking off in the world rankings. Like you only need to look at QS, Times Higher Education, look at growth and change in the last few years, and you'll very clearly see that these Chinese institutions are really growing and taking on a much higher place. But let's look at the other things too. So world-leading knowledge. Okay, in China, you can find courses in almost anything, as you can in almost any country. But then why is this such a great place to come and study? Well, let's look at a couple of fields. And again, Professor Zhu and Mr. Kosnerak will talk a little bit more about this shortly, but look at a field like business. China is leading the world in business. China is changing the way the world does business. Currently, pretty much all supply chains, all business go through China. If you're wanting to learn about business and the way business is changing and where it's going to go in the future, where's the best place to come and study business? China is probably one of the best places to come because China is changing the way the world does business. China is setting the new standards. China is helping people. If you come here and study, you're going to be learning the key ideas here. You're going to be building networks with the people who are going to be leading businesses worldwide in the future. Science and technology. There's research that shows that China will be surpassing the US as the #1 investment country for research and development by 2022, by next year. If you look at companies like Huawei, DJI, about making drones, BYD with electric cars, Tencent with online services and stuff like this, look at things like electronic currencies and so forth. China again is no longer, for a while there, China was kind of following and learning from other countries, but now China's caught up with them and it's now leading the world in a lot of these fields. And so again, if you're wanting to come and learn about science and technology, this is the place to come and learn about it. A lot of people point to a city like Shenzhen and call it the Silicon Valley of the world, the new Silicon Valley, because actually this is where most of the technology is being made. This is where most of the developments are being made. So if you're wanting to learn about technology and science, America isn't the hub of all knowledge anymore. There are other options, and the way China is growing suggests that this is the place where you can really come and learn about this sort of stuff. Now, in addition to this, obviously, there's also all of the courses being taught in English. So universities like ours, plus some of the other international universities in China, even some of the traditional Chinese universities are teaching courses now in English. So that, okay, if you can learn, if your Chinese is good enough, you can go, your choice of universities in China is much greater. But even if you want to study in English, there's actually a large number of universities here which will help you to study, which will allow you to study in English. CUHK Shenzhen, our university, all of our courses are taught fully in English. You do not need to know Chinese to come here to study. And when you're coming here to study, you're coming to study some of the best courses with some of the best professors in the world. And this ties into the last point about knowledge for life, which is you're getting some of the world's best professors. A lot of the best Chinese professors around the world in recent years have been coming back to China to pick up teaching jobs and professorial positions at universities here in China. And an increasing number of international professors from other countries are actually coming to China to teach too, because of the opportunities that are presented here. So you're not getting B, C, D grade professors when you come here to study, you're getting the best in the world. Our university, again, doesn't just have the top quality professors, we've also got Nobel laureates who teach here, Turing Prize winners, Fields Prize winners. So again, you're still meeting and working and studying with some of the best people in the world. For you as an individual, you're also going to learn important skills for life. So you're going to learn Chinese language while you're here. Where's the best place to learn Chinese? China. I don't think that's rocket science. And this is a language which is the most widely spoken language anywhere in the world. And again, if you can speak Chinese and you're finding yourself working with Chinese companies, there are obviously huge benefits to this. Chinese can be a challenging language to learn. I've certainly found it a big challenge to learn, but it's not impossible. And if you look amongst a lot of foreigners, there's not many foreigners who speak Chinese. There's a lot of Chinese who speak English. But again, if you can speak Chinese, you're going to suddenly have opportunities that very few others can get and very few others have. Chinese culture, same sort of thing here. And I mean, I think that the key here is, okay, you can come here, and if you're interested in traditional Chinese medicine, if you're interested in the great philosophers of China, if you're interested in the martial arts, then that's all very useful. But the real key here is understanding Chinese people and how Chinese people think and how they work and what they expect, and being able to build yourself relationships with these people when you're working with them. And this then ties into the world perspective. Obviously, the way China sees the world is very different to the way America sees the world. All you need to do is watch the news for a day or two, and you'll see this repeatedly over and over again. Now, this doesn't mean you have to agree with either side, but understanding the two different sides, understanding why they believe this and how they believe this is really, really important, and is going to take you a long way in terms of setting yourself up for the future. And then finally, just internships and work opportunities. Again, a city like Shenzhen has opportunities unlike anywhere else in the world. In quite a few jobs, you actually don't need to be fluent in Chinese. You can come and work here anyway. But obviously, having Chinese will then just open doors for you like nothing else. And you'll have chances to go and do things both in China and around the world if you have these Chinese language skills and this understanding of China and Chinese people. The final one I'll get onto before I welcome our guests is just about experience for life. And this is kind of the, I guess, the fun side of things. China is an amazing country, both because of the geography, the history, the culture. And once you get here, you'll discover also their absolute mad passion for food, and how amazing Chinese food here is. Traveling around China is really easy. They've got the super fast trains, which can get you around almost as fast as airplanes can. And you're going to be accessing so many different places and also having access to other countries while you're here. Learning about China and the way people live, the speed of life, things like the technological developments which are happening here will really help you to get a grip on where the world is going. People here don't carry wallets anymore. They just pay with everything using their phone. In Shenzhen at the moment, they're actually developing things like facial recognition and developing driverless cars and staffless hotels and all this sort of technology, which is kind of the sort of stuff which people expect to see in the future. And it's starting here in China. Internationalization. Actually, China already has the world's third largest student enrollment of any nation anywhere in the world. This is primarily because of a lot of people coming here to study Mandarin Chinese, but it will probably grow in the coming years as more people come to study majors here too. And again, so you're not coming to China and just being surrounded by Chinese people, but you're going to be coming here and meeting people from different countries all around the world and different perspectives. And if you bring all this together, then you should see that it's not just the importance of learning about China and understanding China, but it's also about personal development and about how you're going to change as a person. So all of this together with, I mean, I guess the last few points which I just indicate here is China is a very safe country in which to live. The government puts a lot of value on social stability, and therefore, while you're here, you'll find that it's a very safe and easy place to get around. In terms of how it's dealt with COVID-19, it's been one of the top countries in terms of minimizing COVID-19 cases. In Shenzhen, we haven't had a case for several months, I think, from memory. And to be honest, I mean, people walk around without really wearing masks or anything here at the moment, and there's no cases. There are a few areas which are locked down in China at the moment, but this tends to be a very temporary case. So hopefully in going through and saying all this, you get a bit of an idea about what we're trying to say in terms of why China is such an important place to come. It's important for the understanding of China as a superpower. It's important for the ability to study and to learn world-class knowledge. It's important for your future in terms of personal development and aspects like this. Now I'm going to jump over this and I'll come back and introduce our university at the end of the Q&A if we have time, because I believe our two guests are here now, and I'd like to get them to introduce themselves and give a quick presentation if they can. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Professor Zhu Sheping. He's the Vice President of our university, CUHK Shenzhen, but is also a very, very well-renowned scientist, as I mentioned, both in Canada and in China, but also worldwide. And you can see the list of his positions and awards and recognitions here on the screen. So are you there, Professor Zhu?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
I'll pass to you and let you talk for a little while about China and studying science and yourself.
Yeah, thank you, thank you very much. So hello, everybody. It's great to see you through this high-tech things. It's, you know, as Moose introduced, CUHK Shenzhen. You probably by now you know where the name from. The Chinese University of Hong Kong, Shenzhen. So it's a new campus of the CUHK. The word Chinese means not we just speak Chinese here. We actually, our instruction language is English. You know, that means we have Chinese culture. You know, so that word Chinese means Chinese culture. So it's a one of a kind in mainland China. If I were to see, if I see the CUHK, you know, what's the number one thing is about the CUHK is it's internationalization. Before I touch to that, I would like to introduce myself. You know, I graduated from a university in mainland China. Was just like a long time ago. It was 82. So can you imagine? At that time, 1982, so I graduated from university already. So then I worked for 3 years as a research engineer. And in 1985, I went to Canada. So a place in Hamilton, a university called McMaster University in Hamilton, close to Toronto. So I had my master's and my PhD there. Yeah, let me answer, you know, answer a question of why I joined the CUHK Shenzhen. That was 2017. You know, I see the development of China is so rapid. I was thinking about, you know, try to, you know, do something different. So I look around, you know, no kidding, because I could go, probably could go anywhere, any university, you know, in mainland or in any other place, okay? I visited quite a few universities. I really like the CUHK Shenzhen because this is a new campus of CUHK. CUHK is well established. You all know CUHK is well established. It's ranked in the top 50 by QS in the world. So it's with Chinese culture, but it's a language is instruction is English. So that's one thing. I like this university. I really think the academic system is wonderful. The second, it's in Shenzhen. So Moose introduced a lot about Shenzhen. Shenzhen is very, very, very special. You know, people always say Shenzhen is the capital in China for technology, capital for innovation, capital for entrepreneurship. So this is a wonderful place. You know, you probably learned already. 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, when I left China, 1985, I did not know Shenzhen. I heard Shenzhen, that time was a small village. So about 30 years later, we have more than 20 million people here. Why they established so quick? It's because this is just close Hong Kong. So it's have lots of access to the at the international stage. So lots of access. And so the technology developed very, very quick, very quick. If you name all these major companies in China, like Huawei, Tencent, DJI, they name this. They almost every the major companies in Shenzhen. So Shenzhen is the most dynamic, very dynamic, city in the world. I can't imagine. I don't see any place around the world these days you can find a place like Shenzhen, so dynamic. It's very young. You probably don't know. What's the average age in Shenzhen? It's about 30. So you think about a city with average age is 30. So it's a very young, very dynamic. It's a wonderful place. And I choose Shenzhen. It's because of the city too. And Mu said already, China has been booming for many, many years, but Shenzhen is in particular. If you think these days is even further development called a Bay Area. You probably heard about Bay Area. When you think about Bay Area, you think about San Francisco, Tokyo. This is another one, a new one. It's building up very quickly. So when you study in Shenzhen, you have lots of opportunity to interact, to access to those high tech, to interact with the leading companies. So now another reason, university is doing well. In mainland China right now, I think CHK Shenzhen is a very top one, the top number one in terms of admission. In China, there's a Gaokao system. It's a national entrance examination system. So we select the student top 1%, only top 1% through that examination system, you can get into CUHK Shenzhen. It's amazing, 1 out of 100. In many other provinces, we're also leading. So it's very, very hard to get into this university in mainland China. University emphasize a lot of internationalization because it's important for China. It's also important for the world. So there's a target. We target, 15% of our student population will be international, from overseas, from international. Now, let me tell you, in many universities, they say, okay, we have the international student, but they put the international student into a separate college, a separate, place. And in CHK, you will be treated same as domestic student. You share the room with domestic student because it's our believing. It's like when I went to Canada, it's always living with together with different people from the world. So that's the place I learned. It's very important to have the culture, to learn culture things. So learn culture things, the best thing is interaction in daily. So that's what we do this way. We treat the domestic international student exactly the same, with some special help for international student, because we have a Chinese program, and we also have some special. We have a special office for this. It's called ISSO. It's the International Student and Scholar Service Office to help international students. But regards to the daily instruction things, is all the same, and all our class of the teaching language is English. So I think if you know any of our present student, you should talk to them. They have lots of experiences. And also most touched base already about our faculty. most of professors in CERG Shenzhen is like myself. I spent 34 years overseas, as a professor more than about a quarter of a century. So I've been, a professor overseas for a quarter of a century. So we are familiar with this, very familiar with the international system. So that, because faculty is very internationalized, that's why we got a good access, good linkage with all the universities around the world. So right now we have a COVID-19, but if it's a normal years, we always have lots of exchange, we're still ongoing, still ongoing. So let me emphasize again, this university is looking for internationalization. This is one of the top of the characteristic feature of the CERG Shenzhen. So we welcome international student. We're international student, same as domestic, all right? So you have lots of access. So you live it together, you study together, you work together with international, with a domestic student. So you get all the chance to learn the culture things. So based on my experience, this is what I experienced when I went to Canada. So I think it's a wonderful thing. And also these days is, most talking about this already, China is developing very fast. So learn how to do business with China, or speak a little bit Chinese. That's probably a wonderful thing for many of the international students. So I think I strongly encourage you, to consider the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Shenzhen, when you're thinking about going abroad for study. So you'll be very welcome, at this CERG Shenzhen. So I think most. Hello. Hello. I think that I probably that's what I want to say, because it's Moses has introduced the university pretty detail already.
Okay, cool. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now I can hear.
All right. Sorry about that. Wonderful. Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Mark Kosnerak then. And if you have questions for Professor Zhu, then we'll take them after Mr. Kosnerak has spoken. And Mark, are you there at the moment?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. So Mr. Kosnerak is American, born and bred American, studied at a variety of American universities, is now working as executive director of the Shenzhen Finance Institute. And we invited him along today to give a bit of a perspective about studying business and perhaps even touching into a little bit of postgraduate studies in China. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And good evening to all of our audience out there. Thanks for your attention so far this evening. And I hope to give you a little bit of insight as to what I think is so important today about considering China as your destination for business study. Let me share my screen and see if I can get to some slides. Okay, so this is another introductory slide of myself, and this discussion is not about myself, but I want to give you some context about my background to give you an idea of the perspective that I bring to this discussion. I'm not an academic, unlike Professor Zhu, who's has reached a very high level of achievement. I've been a working professional in my life. I've spent about 25 years in the financial markets as a Wall Street analyst, doing equity research for very large institutional asset managers. And prior to that, prior to my business degree, I actually worked as an engineer for almost 10 years for a global multinational company. And so I've really had a lot of experience in international business. And as China has rapidly advanced on the world stage, it's really become a destination for investment, a destination for business travel. And I think whether or not you study here, you're going to find that you're going to have to pay a lot of attention to China during your career over the next decades because of the rapid development that has already occurred and will continue to occur in this country. So let me move on to a few topics that I want to cover. I'm going to talk briefly about 8 different topics and roll through them pretty quickly. And I think you'll find that Murray and Professor Zhu both have highlighted some of these. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but rather emphasize what I think are the important points that they already have put on the table for you. So we've already discussed economic growth, and there are a lot of economic analyses that suggest that in this decade, China will exceed the US as #1 in terms of gross national product, gross domestic product, GDP. And the country is got a further goal by 2049 to actually achieve fully developed status, which would be a similar kind of GDP per capita compared to the US or Western Europe. And so the implication of that is a growth rate that's probably going to be roughly double that of the Western economies for the foreseeable future. And so, of course, with rapid growth comes opportunities. So that is point #1. Just if you had any thoughts about working in China after studying in China, there are going to continue to be considerable opportunities as time continues to unfold. So growth is one thing, but within the growth, there is a lot of transformation that's occurring within China. And that is going to create even more opportunities for well-trained people in both the sciences and the business economy. And some of the things that I am thinking about here is things like Murray already pointed out, the supply chain issue, how China has evolved into sort of a leader in manufacturing on a global basis and has become a key integral part of global manufacturing. Another example is the financial markets. Even though China is the second largest economy worldwide, the financial markets are actually pretty thin and not particularly well developed. So there is a lot of opportunity for ongoing maturity of these markets and then employment opportunities that will occur as these markets continue to develop further. Let's move on to our next one. So related to the second point is this point of dramatic increases in scientific R&D activity that will in turn create a lot of commercial opportunities and job opportunities. So China is on record stating that they are seeking leadership in a variety of new technology areas. Some examples are artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, semiconductor design. I could go on and on. There's a published list of these, and the country is very focused on making progress and developing leadership positions in these areas. So what we're seeing within the Chinese economy is rapid transformation. Professor Zhu a minute ago said that he first came to Shenzhen several decades ago. At that point in time, Shenzhen was a manufacturing base for very low-tech products like furniture, shoes, plastic materials. And now, as we've pointed out, it's the Silicon Valley of China. It's the center of the digital economy, the center of the communication economy with Huawei and ZTE, for instance. So things shift very rapidly in China and will continue to do so, creating more opportunities. So we mentioned the supply chain again, and so I'm just touch on it here. This isn't something that's going away. The export contribution to China's GDP is almost 20%, compared to the US is only about 12%. So import-export activity is going to be, for the foreseeable future, a major driver of economic growth. And so people that understand Chinese business practices, understand the culture, pick up some language skills, you can position yourself within this East versus West concept that has been evolving in China and will continue to. So a lot of opportunities for working in multinational companies that do business with China, either selling to China or exporting, or source of exports out of China. Okay, let's move on to number 5. This is just, again, reiterating that with rapid growth and transformation of a variety of business sectors within the Chinese market, there's huge employment opportunities, and that will continue, I think, for the foreseeable future. Also, we're seeing wage increases get more pronounced, and so wages are starting to become more in line with Western wages for similar kinds of work. So that's a very encouraging sign. Now, one thing that Marie may have pointed out is that in a lot of the education within China, there's a high quantitative element to it, and it's no different in business training. Finance, economics, marketing, all are very data intensive, how they're taught here. And so these are leading edge skills that you're going to pick up that I think China is much more developed. They do a better job at training students in these kind of developing your toolkit in the quantitative area compared to Western programs. And I think that's the way the industry is going to continue to evolve, and you're going to be positioned very well if you force yourself to pick up some strong math and programming skills while you're studying business. Murray pointed out the opportunity to pick up language skills, so I won't belabor that point. It's pretty obvious that if you're going to do business with China, you ought to be able to speak some Chinese. And then finally, it's just a fantastic opportunity to network. You're going to have an opportunity to be engaged with top professors. I think we can this just gives you an idea of some of the faculty where I work. Murray and I work at CUHK Shenzhen, and I represent the graduate program, but you can see the training level of our faculty there. Chinese natives, Chinese undergrad, but then Western postgraduate studies, and then many of our faculty have actually held faculty positions at Western universities before they came back. The point I'm making here is, again, this concept of East versus West. If you're studying in China, you aren't necessarily just learning about the Chinese way of doing business. You're really getting the best of both. You'll understand Western approaches and then how China is different. So that's very important, something you wouldn't be able to pick up elsewhere. And then finally, your networking also includes at our program and many of the other top programs in China, opportunity to interface and engage with what we call practitioners. These are working professionals that bring their on-the-job experience into the classroom. And so you can just see on this slide some of the backgrounds of the people that we work with. And so these, what you'll have if you're studying at our program or other top programs is opportunities to meet high-level working professionals and really open doors to potential employment or future networking opportunities. So that is really the points I wanted to make today. I hope you'll consider China in your plans for your future academic studies. And I think at this point, I'll turn it back over to Murray.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mark. I appreciate your presentation there. Unfortunately, Professor Zhu has had to take off. We've just got a message saying that he's had to leave. So we can't, unfortunately, ask him to answer any questions, but Mark and I will stick around and answer a few questions if people have them. Stavrola, do you know whether there's any questions? Is there anything that we can discuss here?
Quite a few, but Rosemary has covered quite a few of them off, but I might ask a few that were quite interesting from what I can see. I think one of the biggest questions at the moment will be, are classes in person? Are they online at the moment? Is there a blended option?
Okay, so it depends a little bit on if you can get into China or not. If you are in China, we've actually been face-to-face online, full face-to-face since September last year. We only had a short downtime where we were doing all classes online. The only issue is for international students and whether they can get into China or not. And at the moment, most universities in China are doing face-to-face classes for anyone in China. And then online classes for anyone outside China. There has recently been murmurings and mumblings that the borders are likely to open soon for international students. A few of the international universities have been talking about expecting announcements from the government in the coming months, or in the coming weeks, actually. So we're reasonably optimistic that this problem will be resolved and that students will be able to get into China soon. But until we get, from our perspective at our university, until we get an official announcement from the university, we're a little bit cautious about making any promises.
Of course, really just to look at government guidelines and advice is probably the best way to go. Okay, next question. Are there any opportunities for funded research, particularly in medical fields or sciences?
Mark, as a postgraduate coordinator, you might be better placed to talk about funded research. Can you go into this at all?
I really hear the question very well. Could you?
Sure. Are there any opportunities for funded research, particularly in medical fields or the sciences?
Funded research, say funded by either a private private institutions or government institutions?
Yeah, I presume so.
Yeah, the answer is yes, but it's very specific to individual programs and actual individual projects as well. So it's hard to make a blanket statement about that, but there are opportunities. I'm not sure how I could weigh that against, say, funded research in the US, for instance, which I know quite well, which is almost 100% funded. Most people going for PhDs in the sciences or medical area they get full scholarships or fellowships. It's not quite that well developed yet in China, but it's moving in that direction.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark, for the answer. And we have another interesting question here. Will I gain a chance to gain an internship with my studies and to network with potential employers, particularly in the cryptocurrency industries?
100%. I mean, I'll let Mark kind of tap in a little bit on the end, but if I can just jump in quickly here.
Sure.
Our undergraduates, like internships are an essential part of study now. It doesn't matter what field you're going into or what you're doing. You kind of have to have job experience when you graduate from a university. So internships are an essential part of our university, and I know quite a few of the other universities that I've worked with in China. The one thing that I would really emphasize here is the importance of learning Chinese. You don't have to know Chinese to be able to get out and do an internship. We have actually quite a few international students at our university at the moment who don't speak any Chinese who have still been able to get out and do internships. But, and this is the big but, your options are slightly smaller if you don't speak Chinese. And again, depending on where you're from in the world, you probably would be able to understand this if you think about someone from Indonesia or someone from Germany or somewhere like this. Okay, a company might be happy to have you if you don't necessarily speak German or Indonesian or the native language, but they're probably going to prefer someone who does speak the language. And especially here in China, they want someone who's going to be able to come in and interact with the other people in their organization. So if you do come to China to study and you want to get into internships and employment opportunities, I can't emphasize enough the importance of learning Chinese language to really broaden your opportunities here. Because while you still can get opportunities without Chinese, the opportunities are much, much more narrow. Mark, did you want to add anything to that, or are you?
I think that's quite clear, Murray. I won't muddy the waters. I think that explains it all.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure about for postgraduate opportunities and stuff like that, but I know for undergraduate, that's definitely true.
Great, thank you. And is there any particular deadline for applications at the moment? Do you have any deadlines?
For undergraduate, I'll let Mark talk about postgraduate shortly, but for undergraduate, for our university, we actually have an early round of admissions closing at the end of December, the 28th of December. Our final applications will be taken on the 15th of May. Chinese universities in general will be kind of similar. You will find some of the more traditional Chinese universities will continue to take applications until June and July. Again, especially if you're just looking at a Chinese language course or something like this. But again, a lot of the better universities and higher quality universities will be closing their admission deadlines by probably mid-May or so. For postgraduate studies, Mark?
It's very similar. So we have in the Shenzhen Finance Institute, we've got four enrollment periods, but as Professor Zhu mentioned a few minutes ago, we are at Shenzhen Finance Institute and CUHK Shenzhen. We have kind of rapidly become a destination for highly talented students. And so what we see is even though we've got a kind of a rolling application process and 4 sequential deadlines running through mid-May, just like the undergrad, we see that a lot of our spots get allocated early. So, you know, even though we're open until May, I would urge anyone that considering our school anyway to move with haste with regard to their applications.
Yeah, definitely try and get your application in early if you're wanting best chance of admission and best chance of scholarship.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's going to be the roundup of our questions for today. However, if you are watching on the recording, please do send in your questions to us and we will forward those on to the university to get back to you. Any last words from you guys or everything rounded off?
I'm reasonably happy. I thank you all for coming and listening. And again, if you ever have any questions, then do please contact us and we're very happy to talk about the options and what it's like here. I mean, one of the options which I would also suggest is on our website, you can actually talk directly to some of our students who are studying here in China. So if you can't find that yourself, then please send us an email and we can actually put you in touch with some of our students and they can talk about what it's like living in China and studying in China and dealing with culture shock and Chinese food and Chinese students and living in dormitories with Chinese students and all of these sort of things, because it is a very different world and there are a lot of things to get used to here, but it is a great opportunity at the same time. So yeah, don't be a stranger. Feel free to write and we'll be very, very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much for a brilliant presentation, everybody. And thank you to those who did turn up today and to those who will be watching on the recording and on Facebook. Goodbye, and we will always be here for any more questions. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.